Alright. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for doing this for me because it's taken up your time to be able to talk to me about this stuff. But so this is my curriculum class that I have for my EDS, and I'm conducting interviews with the curriculum specialists at several districts just to get a feel for what you do in this position as a curriculum specialist. So I have some questions and a script that we're going to follow to be able to just have a little conversation about what you do. So the first question is just the general question of curriculum. Alright, so can you just kind of get started and talk about what your system does and the approach that you take to identifying the curriculums that you're going to use? And
yes, and this is something we're actually in the middle of, and we started a project last summer and we called it the Curriculum Project. We brought in teachers from kindergarten through 12th grade and had them sit down together and collaborate with one another to set up what essentially are pacing guides, but we call them curriculum frameworks, so that we know that we are teaching the same thing each 9 weeks throughout the system. And so that's something that we have started. It is a work in progress. We are going to have to meet again this summer because we've learned a lot and we've had to back up and punt a few times.
Right.
We know that we put way too many subjects in first 9 weeks because first 9 weeks is always sort of a catch-up from the year before, and a little bit of learning procedures and that type of thing. So we've got to redistribute some of the standards throughout the year, but that's something that we have started.
so in that process, you found some things horizontally that might need to change throughout the working. So like 4th grade from, say, Woodland, working with 4th grade from Weowie Elementaries and things, and maybe shift around. How do you do that and address it vertically?
Well, some of the things that we have done as well as our collaborative PD models, and AMSTI has helped with that with our math folks this year. The math folks from our focus and priority schools are participating in a math professional learning team. However, for the past 2 years, we've been having collaborative professional development where teachers from throughout the system come in and group by subject area, and so we have all grades together, in one group, and that's important for us because we have a total of 7 schools, including the Career Technical Center, but 2 of our schools are extremely small. One of the schools only has 1 class per grade level, and another school has 1 or 2 just in the elementary grades. And then when you get into the high school especially, and this is throughout the county, for example, there's only 1 7th and 8th grade math teacher at each high school.
Right.
So they can't collaborate with themselves, and so it's very important to bring them all together.
That's something that I was able to see, and through participating in one of those meetings, and thinking about Wadley. The math job at Wadley is so much more difficult because that's 6 preps in one day that she's trying to juggle and plan for. So it makes it a lot more difficult to make sure that you plan for rigorous instruction throughout the day. So with that rigor in instruction, what is the plan to make sure that we engage all students in rigorous instruction? So including those gifted kids to the regular ed kids to the special ed kids, the RTI kids. So what's your approach to that?
The ALLs, we teach all kids,
Yep.
And so
the ALLs, I
yes,
like that.
and they're all in one class, especially here. We don't get to, we don't necessarily have an honors group or anything like that. So the teachers have to work on that, and they have to make a strategic plan and purposeful planning so that they can address that. Rigor is something that I'm not going to try to pretend that we have it mastered. We don't. I think the teachers are seeing that, especially when they know that the students know the material, but then if they use another assessment, such as, or maybe say ACT exemplars or some Scantron performance series questions, and they look at those questions versus what they're doing, they may realize that the rigor of what they're doing is not quite up to the students actually answering the questions,
Right.
even though they know the base material. And a lot of that goes back to academic vocabulary.
Right.
And if they're not using that in the classroom, then the student is not going to know how to answer the question when they get to the standardized test.
So what do you do to assure that those instructional objectives and the curricular goals are aligned?
We just work. I mean, that's all you can do. You still
So it's just a continual work
It
in progress?
is. It is continual work in progress. You look at the standards, and I think that's something that the curriculum frameworks have helped with,
Right.
especially as the new standards have been implemented. It's making the teachers go back and look directly at the standards, especially sometimes in secondary education, they like to teach the textbook that they have.
Right.
And so it's very important to get away from that and to go back and to look at, you know, what do I need to teach? What does this standard actually say?
Right.
And they need to break that down. And when working together as a collaborative group, they're able to do that,
Right.
and it's helpful.
How do you lead and motivate faculty members to adhere to the prescribed state standards?
Well, I hope that I've, through actions and words, have shown them how important they are. We've implemented benchmark testing. We do that 2 through 10, 11th grade optional.
Right.
So we use Scantron Performance to do that. And Scantron Performance tests on the standards. And it's a predictor for the ACT Aspire and for the ACT, and therefore, you know, validation studies that go along with that. And so I think by pushing teachers to work towards growth in that area, that it's helping them to look at the standard itself and whether it's mastered or not, and whether there's growth in the standard, instead of just looking at the number to see if the number has gone up, because it's important to break it down farther than that.
So in that process, how do you work with all the stakeholders to identify instructional and curricular needs that align with the district's shared vision and available resources?
I'm going to go back to our collaborative PD on this one. When I first glanced at the question here that I'm looking at, we have vast instructional needs, and our curriculum is not necessarily, you know, we have some old textbooks. We have, you know, that's an issue I know across the state. We have, we just have to do the best that we can with what we have, and if you focus on the standards and get your resources to teach the standard instead of using a resource, you know, instead of teaching the resource itself, then that helps you stick to aligning your curriculum to where it needs to go.
So one of the things on this that I know that I participated in was a PTA night at Woodland.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to that just a little bit?
Mm-hmm. AMSTI came in and met with the PTA at Woodland High School. Woodland High School is kindergarten through 12th grade, and this was an invitation by the math instructors there where they wanted AMSTI. They wanted y'all to come in and talk about what you do and why you do it and how important the standards are. And I really thought that there was some good learning that night. I thought that some of the parents finally understood why we were doing what we were doing and why we're benchmark testing and why are we teaching this way. And
I know there was the one guy that he was pretty passionate about his questioning, but by listening to what he was saying and not just, you know, trying to argue him down, but hearing what he was saying and trying to provide an explanation, I felt like that we had somebody that was initially not a fan, but when we left, it felt like that we had a team member on board with what we were trying to do.
I did too. And you were mostly, you know, discussing with him, but there were parents around me that I could hear that were saying, "Oh, okay, now we know why we're doing it this way," and so that was helpful, I thought.
It was. It's always kind of nerve-wracking a little bit on the inside when we go down that road, but at the same time, it always seems to provide us with an opportunity to gain, you know, some allies in our in our process. So how do you monitor and assess instructional programs, activities, and materials?
The biggest three things, I look at data, I get feedback from teachers and students, and then observations. You can't just go by the data, but even though it is, it needs to be a flashlight, it needs to show you where to look for problems, but, you don't need to just sit back and rely on it. Teacher feedback is a big thing. But again, you have to take that with a grain of salt, because they may or may not have bought into what you're asking them to do. And so you have to be, with any administrative role in education, you have to be visible. And you have to provide support. And the more support that you provide, even in the littlest thing, as it could be answering an email about how do I renew my certificate, or who do I see to do this, but as long as you provide support and continued support for the littlest thing in education, then you get buy-in from the teachers. And if you get buy-in from the teachers, then they're going to follow you and they're going to do what you ask them to do.
I know from our standpoint, the trainings that we do and the PLT teams and the things, the ones that we feel like are most successful is when the principal can find time to join in a little bit. We've got one in particular where she just rolls her sleeves up and comes right on in and just give me a part of what we're going to do and learn, and so it sets a tone for everybody else on the team to make sure that they're operating at a high level, they're allowing themselves to be vulnerable, and they're putting themselves out there to learn because she's doing it too.
Right.
And being the leader in
And
that.
that's important.
So how do you use diagnostic tools to assess, identify, and apply instructional improvements?
Well, and this is something that I've discussed with my reading specialist, my instructional coach. I've had discussions with you, and Melanie as well. One of the things that you need to look for as far as a flashlight to see where you might have a problem with instruction is gaps over time, similar patterns in data over time for particular teachers. Now, everybody can have a year that doesn't go well. Everybody can have a group of kids that don't score particularly well or score particularly high, so that the next year they may not look as good. So you have to compare that and you have to look at trend. But if you have a trend that stays like this and there's no growth, there's never any growth across anywhere, that's where you got to look. And it definitely shows the need for instructional improvement.
That's one of the things that I do like about ACT Aspire and that skills proficiency report, where it identifies your strongest domains and then your weakest domains. And so I know from my time in the classroom, that was something that I always did for myself, was identify those for myself that were weak, but then also the others within the faculty, because I taught at a big enough school to have some people that taught my grade level. And so then I would just go and sit in their classes and try to figure out why. Why are their students able to perform a little bit better than mine were? And then I made necessary changes, and then through that process I was able to always keep myself in the forefront of the positive data for the school, because I was always looking to improve what I was able to do. And if we can get our teachers to do that, just to take that initiative and provide for them, like you said, the support, then that helps our students, to be able to achieve more. Well, all right. So this question can go as long as you want it to, but what are the greatest difficulties of this position?
My position in particular, and I'm sure this has gone across whoever you have interviewed, you're usually not just the curriculum coordinator. You have other duties. You may be,
wearing hats.
Yes, I'm responsible for the media specialist, I'm responsible for the counselors, I'm responsible for county cheerleader tryouts.
Wow.
It just varies. There's a long list of things that we have to do that take us away from curriculum. But it's so important, that we.
So you could pretty much say it in time is the issue, being able to budget it and for all the different things that you have to do.
Yes. professional development. I'm the SCIPD person for the district. So,
Right.
you know, if we get credit, then it comes through me. So, just things like that.
And that's also something that, and the reason why I've chosen the different schools that I have to get that picture, because in bigger districts, they may not wear as many hats.
That's true.
But the common thread is time is still an issue.
That's right.
So it is, I know that in the smaller districts, those responsibilities seem to be more with what you're doing, but at the same time, it does seem to be that there's not enough hours in the day, no matter how many things you're doing.
Right.
So what are the factors that interfere with achieving district goals and objectives?
Well, we want to see growth, and we want to see all students learn. And, you know, this goes back to the school level, too. It starts at the school. We've got to protect instructional time.
Right.
That's something that I think is going to be one of our focuses for next school year.
Right.
We have way too many interferences, especially at the high school level. You know, so-and-so come to the gym for pictures, or, you know, dismiss this group to do so-and-so. And so we need to protect our instructional time, so that's a big factor. Getting the right training for teachers in the right areas. And I think that's something that we need to look at too, is putting our best teachers in areas of need, not necessarily in the areas where they want to be.
Right.
And that's sort of hard to do.
I understand.
Yeah, and so that's
So our
another.
greatest needs in the state of Alabama in math are the 7th and 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Yet our best teachers are teaching pre-cal
Yes.
in most cases,
Yes.
or the advanced students, because they've identified themselves to be very good at instruction. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we take them away from the
Mhm.
students that need them
The most.
So
Yeah.
that's huge.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, it'd be a hard sell in a
Yeah,
lot of cases.
It would. I swear, I wish that we had a little bit more flexibility in
Mhm.
terms of maybe even doing stipend. I mean, if we recognize that they're harder positions, then, I mean,
Yeah.
we could, there should be some way that we could incentivize that a little
Mhm.
bit more to make that decision easier for our teachers to make.
Right.
So how would you characterize the curriculum here at Randolph County, given the 3 choices being a knowledge-centered curriculum, the learning-centered curriculum, or a society-centered curriculum?
Basically 2 of the 3. Knowledge-centered, based on standards. That's what we preach, you know, and just standards. And then society-centered for our career tech classes in the career tech center. They do a lot of project-based learning, and are hoping to move solely towards that in the field of career tech. You know, the learner-centered, where the kids choose, that's great. And I say, but we don't have that flexibility here.
Right.
In a smaller system.
So I know that just from talking to the students in the classes here when I've been in and serving, there is a large population of students that the career tech aspect of things and looking at that vocation outside of school seems to be the track that a lot of them
Mm-hmm.
are looking at choosing.
Right.
So it's I think it's wonderful to have that aspect of what you do for them to go ahead and be learning. You know, if I can come out of here as a certified welder, that puts me in a place ready to get a job
Right.
right out of school. It's going to pay well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great part of what's taking place. So what aspects of your curriculum help you choose that characteristics? And I think you pretty much answered that question. So anything else that I haven't asked that would be good for me to know? What a curriculum specialist does.
Roll with the punches.
Roll with the punches.
Be willing to change. Be open-minded.
Right.
And just because you've really worked hard on something for the last 3 years, expect a change to come, and you're going to have to be willing to push for that and implement that if you see that it's best for the students. And to keep in mind, above all else, student learning is your goal. And it's not, you want good instruction, you want good teachers, but in the end, we're putting out a product, and that's instructed students. So, and knowledge, students who have knowledge for the next phase of their life.
Well, thank you very much for your
You're
time on this
welcome.
interview, and that it helps me tremendously. So thank you.
You're welcome.